Stop being an emotional victim. Lock your nervous system and win the mental game. Author, Vahid Zekavati. Copyright, VMZ Productions. Introduction. I am Vahid Zekavati, and this document is about to forge your most formidable mental armor. Did you realize how many times daily you grant a single word or opinion the power to steal your peace? Are you ready to understand why 99% of people never manage to permanently lock down their nervous system and why you are about to be different? You want full control over your life, right? How can a simple email or a bitter memory push you to the brink of explosion? This document is the blueprint for your mental awakening, a definitive formula that transforms you from someone who merely reacts to someone who chooses.
Chapter 1. How you grant others and circumstances permission to press your buttons. If you think traffic, a colleague, or your spouse are wrecking your nerves, you are fatally wrong. You're handing them the key to your destruction, and until now, you were unaware. To win this mental game, we must accept a shocking truth in these first 90 seconds. Others are only triggers. The reaction originates entirely within you. If you can identify and manage 3 vital components within yourself right now, you've conquered 90% of the battle. These 3 simple yet critical components are 1. Cognition, thought, 2. Emotion, feeling, and 3. Behavior, action. This is your personal triangle of control. Typically, we don't manage these 3 factors. We just live them, and this is precisely where external forces exploit us. We are thinking every moment, every day. Have you ever truly considered how profoundly the quality of your thoughts impacts your life? These thoughts are the filter through which you perceive reality. If your filter is dirty and cluttered with irrational beliefs, a mere drop of water is perceived as a flood. The cold reality is this: when someone criticizes you, that criticism is just sound. It is the voice inside you that interprets it as an insult and a threat. It is that simple. Through your thoughts, you convert a neutral event into an emotional bomb, subconsciously handing the key to your nerves over to the critic. Why is your nerve button always accessible? Because we lack the skill to master this triple threat. Regarding thought, we are riddled with mental viruses that I will introduce in the next chapter. Regarding emotion, we simply allow extreme feelings like severe anger or anxiety to dominate us, believing we have no choice but to surrender. And regarding behavior, we engage in only extreme reactions, yelling, slamming fists, retreating, instead of delivering a logical, deliberate response. For your nervous system to be locked, these 3 factors must be perpetually under your command. This document teaches you to act like an engineer to control this trifecta. You must understand that only through effective effort, continuous practice, and sheer will can you master these 3 factors. These are the rules of engagement. You must not be a victim of these factors, but their master. A person whose nerve button is unlocked is like a house without proper doors and windows. Any wind or storm can destroy it. The arrogant colleague, the fault-finding boss, or even the long checkout line, all can easily throw you into turmoil because you grant them permission in your mind. The more permission you grant, the more control you lose over your life. Here is a painful truth. Most people structure their lives around reacting to others' behavior, but you are not going to be part of that 99%. With this document, you will gain the power to immediately recognize which one of these 3 factors is failing in any moment of stress. The next chapter will plunge you into the darkest corners of your mind to expose the specific viruses destroying your peace. Be ready to face the villains that have been operating under the cover of your thoughts.
Chapter 2. The Terrifying Trinity: Catastrophizing, Demandingness, and Global Rating. If you want a blueprint for why you lose your mind over minor issues, this 90-second reveal is your most brutal wake-up call. The largest, most destructive lie our subconscious whispers is, "This is completely intolerable and I am ruined if it continues." This is the voice of the 3 mental viruses identified by rational emotive behavior therapy. 1. Catastrophizing. 2. Demandingness. And 3. Global rating. These are the demons that turn simple inconvenience into absolute disaster. You must know their names to defeat them. First, catastrophizing. This is when you take a bad outcome, a job loss, a breakup, or a simple mistake, and blow it up into a 100% intolerable horror. It's not just bad, it's the worst thing that could ever happen. This is a purely illogical assessment. Is it truly a tragedy? Is it worse than a natural disaster, war, or losing a loved one? No. But your brain, infected with this virus, treats it as such, plunging you into paralyzing anxiety or despair. This virus thrives on fear, draining your cognitive resources and making you incapable of rational problem solving. It's an internal panic alarm set to maximum sensitivity. Second, demandingness. This is the core of all human misery. It's the belief that things must be exactly as you want them to be. My partner must treat me fairly. I must succeed at everything I try. The world must be just. When reality inevitably violates these ironclad, self-imposed rules, the emotional result is pure, explosive anger when others break the rule, or debilitating depression when you break your own rule. Demandingness turns you into a cosmic dictator whose demands the universe always ignores. Every must is a fragile rope you've tied your well-being to, and when it snaps, and it always does, you fall into chaos. You must realize that the world is. It doesn't have to be. Accepting this truth is the first step towards reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. Third, global rating or self-downing. This virus is arguably the most insidious. It's when you take a negative action or performance and use it to define your total self-worth. I failed the exam. Therefore, I am a complete failure and a worthless person. This is illogical. Your exam failed, not your entire identity. Global rating leads to crippling low self-esteem and makes you hypersensitive to external criticism because you've conditioned your worth on flawless performance. This is why criticism from a boss feels like an existential threat, because you've allowed a temporary judgment of your work to become a permanent judgment of you. You must stop rating your entire self based on individual, fallible actions. You are a human being who acts, not a perfect deity who is failure-proof. The key to freedom lies in accepting your fallibility while rejecting the toxic habit of self-condemnation. These 3 villains, catastrophizing, demandingness, and global rating, are the hidden drivers behind every nervous breakdown and rage incident. They operate in the shadows of your mind, translating reality into emotional toxicity. But the battle is not lost. The next chapter will give you the most powerful mental weapon to completely transform these viruses into powerful tools for peace. Get ready to learn the ultimate substitution formula.
Chapter 3: The Neuro-Linguistic Secret: Converting Demands into Realistic Preferences. If you want the single most powerful technique to neutralize your emotional viruses in 90 seconds, pay attention now. This shift in language is the difference between a life of rage and a life of serenity. In the previous chapter, you faced the terrifying trinity of irrational beliefs. Now we introduce the antidote, the neuro-linguistic formula that rewires your brain, converting rigid demands, musts, into flexible preferences, I prefer. This is not just wordplay, it's cognitive surgery. The average person lives under the tyranny of musts. Think about the sheer emotional weight in the statement, "I must be respected by everyone, and if I am not, I am worthless, and they are horrible people who must be punished." The must creates a non-negotiable expectation. When this expectation is violated, and human nature guarantees it will be, your nervous system registers a severe internal threat, triggering a catastrophic fight or flight response. Your rage is simply the panic of a must being shattered. Now, apply the linguistic cure. Transform that statement into a preference. I prefer to be respected by everyone, and I will try to behave respectfully to encourage that. However, if some people choose not to respect me, that is simply an unfortunate reality, not a catastrophe, and it says nothing about my inherent worth. Notice the profound shift. The must is an absolute demand on the universe. The prefer is a statement of human desire. When the demand is violated, you feel rage and despair. When the preference is not met, you feel disappointment or regret. Normal, healthy emotions that do not hijack your nervous system. Disappointment is a healthy emotion. Rage is a paralyzing choice. This technique gives you back your power. When you use prefer, you maintain your motivation. You still want to be successful, you still prefer justice, but you eliminate the destructive emotional attachment to the outcome. You learn to strive intensely, but not catastrophize failure. This is the ultimate skill of emotional resilience. Think of it like this. Demandingness, must, is like setting a trap for yourself. You expect a guaranteed outcome, and when the guarantee fails, the trap springs. Preference is like having a strong hope. If the hope is realized, you celebrate. If it isn't, you adjust and move on. The trap never springs. This principle extends to all three viruses. Catastrophizing, "This is awful, I must not fail," becomes, "This is deeply inconvenient, but I prefer not to fail, and I can certainly survive and learn if I do." Global rating, "I must be flawless to be a worthy person," becomes, "I prefer to perform well, but I accept myself unconditionally as a fallible human being, even when I make mistakes." This semantic shift is the core power of this document. It requires meticulous mental monitoring, catching those subtle musts the moment they arise. The next chapter will provide you with the immediate 4-step action plan to execute this transformation in the heat of a real-life crisis. Be prepared to act fast.
Chapter 4: The 4-Step Tactical Response, DISC, for immediate anger deactivation. Do you know what to do in theory, but freeze or explode in practice? That's because you lack a tactical fire drill for your mind. The first 90 seconds introduces DISC, your emergency mental protocol. Knowing the difference between must and prefer is intellectual. Applying it when your heart is pounding and your face is flushed is the real challenge. The DISC technique is your cognitive fire drill, a 4-step tactical sequence that breaks the old habit of immediate destructive reaction. You must drill this until it becomes a reflex faster than your anger. Step 1. D. Detect the discomfort. You must immediately and consciously recognize the destructive emotion. It's not just annoyance, it is intense anger, rage, or paralyzing anxiety. This step is about instant, objective self-awareness. Pause, take a breath, mentally declare, I am experiencing extreme anger. This brief pause creates the critical space needed for intervention. If you miss this first step, the rest is impossible. The emotional floodgates will open. Step 2. Identify the irrational belief. This is where you quickly locate the internal must. Ask yourself pointedly, what absolute demand or catastrophic thought is fueling this fire? You are searching for the underlying sentence that begins with should, ought to, or must. For example, the driver must signal, or my child should listen to me immediately. The speed of this identification is key. The faster you expose the lie, the less power it holds. Step 3. S. Substitute with a realistic preference. This is the application of the cure you learned in Chapter 3. You must forcefully and explicitly replace the identified must with an I prefer. The original thought was a command. The new thought is a desire with acceptance of non-fulfillment. The driver must signal becomes I prefer that the driver signal for safety, but they are clearly acting irrationally, and my life will not end because of their poor driving. This substitution de-escalates the emotional response from panic to mere disappointment. Step 4. C. Correct the consequent action. Now that the emotional temperature has dropped, you can choose a rational and constructive response instead of a toxic reaction. If your initial reaction was to scream at the driver, the corrected action is to take a deep breath and change lanes safely. If the initial reaction was to brood over a mistake, the corrected action is to plan the next step or seek advice. The C step is the visible proof that you have regained control. You are not reacting to the trigger, you are responding to the outcome of your own rational process. The DISC technique is designed to be executed in under 60 seconds once mastered. It demands intense mental focus and relentless practice. Every time you successfully apply DISC, you are weakening the old neural pathway of rage and reinforcing the new pathway of calm resilience. This practice turns theory into a superpower. The next chapter will push this tactical skill to its limit by forcing you to apply DISC against the ultimate challenge, the critics and emotional manipulators in your inner circle. Chapter 5. The Invincibility Shield. Locking nerves against critics and toxic personalities. Do you feel emotionally drained after interacting with certain people? They are your mental vampires. This 90-second strategy provides the definitive shield to stop their emotional feeding. It's easy to manage your nerves when you're alone, but the real test of your mental strength comes in confrontation. We all have those individuals, the chronically critical boss, the relentlessly complaining family member, or the friend who thrives on drama. These people are experts at identifying and pressing your emotional buttons. Your vulnerability to these toxic personalities stems from one core irrational belief, the demand for approval. The underlying thought is, I must have their respect, love, or approval to be okay, and their criticism must not happen. When they criticize you, this demand is violated, and you feel the familiar pain of self-downing and anger. This is the moment to deploy your invincibility shield. The core of the shield is logical indifference to external judgment. This doesn't mean you become a cold, uncaring person. It means you strategically withdraw the emotional energy you previously invested in their judgment. When a critic launches an attack, your immediate, split-second action must be the mental tongue bite, the step D of the disc. Pause. Then forcefully apply the S step. Substitute the demand. Replace "his criticism must stop and he must recognize my value" with "I prefer his praise, but his opinion is merely a reflection of his own flawed perspective, and it has no authority over my self-worth." The crucial understanding here is that toxic behavior is a reflection of the toxic person's internal reality, not yours. The chronic complainer lives under the tyranny of their own musts and catastrophizing. Their negativity is their desperate attempt to offload their internal stress onto you. When you internalize their drama, you become the secondary victim of their irrationality. By refusing to engage emotionally, you are not being rude, you are enforcing a healthy, necessary boundary. Their attack hits your invincibility shield and bounces right back to them. The golden rule in conflict: do not debate their judgment of you. Instead, calmly address the facts of the situation. If a boss angrily states, "You always miss deadlines," a global rating, do not engage in the emotional defense. Simply respond, "I hear your concern about the last deadline, and I am implementing X and Y to ensure it doesn't happen again." You address the action, X and Y, and ignore the toxic generalization, always. This strips them of the emotional power they seek. By controlling your reaction, you control the entire interaction and protect your internal peace. The calmness you project will eventually force the toxic person to either adjust their behavior or seek a more reactive target. The next chapter will explore the deepest root of this vulnerability, your relationship with yourself.
Chapter 6. The Ultimate Lock. Achieving Unconditional Self-Acceptance, USA, and Ending Self-Sabotage. Why does a simple mistake haunt you for days? Because you have an internal judge with impossibly high standards. The first 90 seconds will expose your deepest vulnerability, self-worth based on performance. The reason the criticism of others or your own mistakes can immediately plunge you into despair and self-limiting is that you practice conditional self-acceptance. You accept yourself only if you meet certain conditions: perfect performance, constant success, universal approval, or no mistakes. Your self-worth is a fragile rope tied to fleeting external factors. The true lock on your nervous system is unconditional self-acceptance, USA. This is the profound understanding that your worth as a human being is not measurable, not conditional, and not dependent on your performance, success, or lack of mistakes. You are valuable simply because you exist as a fallible human being capable of reason and growth. When you fail an exam, CSA screams, "I failed, I am a failure, and I am worthless." USA calmly states, "My attempt failed, I acted poorly, but I remain a valuable person who can choose to learn and try again." This mental shift is revolutionary. When you achieve USA, you remove the catastrophic emotional stakes from performance. You still prefer to succeed and you still work hard, but the fear of failure is no longer paralyzing. When you practice USA, criticism no longer destroys you because you have already accepted that you are imperfect, and a critic's opinion is merely pointing out an existing expected flaw. You are not perfect, and that is perfectly okay. The biggest challenge to USA is the viral thought of global rating, Chapter 2. You must vehemently stop summarizing your entire worth based on a single action. If you make a bad investment, you've made a bad investment. You haven't become a bad person. If you yell at your child, you've committed a bad action. You haven't become a bad parent.
You are a parent who behaved badly, and you can correct the behavior. Separate the deed from the doer. USA gives you true emotional security. If you lose your job, you mourn the loss of the job, a healthy emotion, but you don't panic about the loss of your identity, an unhealthy emotion. You accept yourself, flaws and all, which ironically gives you the confidence and calm to genuinely improve those flaws. You stop wasting mental energy on self-pity and dedicate it to productive change. This acceptance is the ultimate form of self-love and the strongest barrier against external attacks. The next chapter will show you how to apply this inner stability to the relentless pressure of chronic stress.
Chapter 7: The Silent Killer: Managing Chronic Stress and Escaping Emotional Burnout. Do you constantly feel a low-grade hum of anxiety and exhaustion? You're not stressed. You're suffering from nervous burnout, and your self-imposed musts are the fuse. The first 90 seconds must serve as a red flag. Chronic stress is a collection of small, persistent demands, workload, financial worries, family obligations that erode your mental defenses until your nerve button is permanently exposed and hypersensitive. You react explosively to minor things because your emotional reservoir is completely empty. The primary solution lies in attacking your load of irrigational demands. The person suffering from burnout is carrying a massive mental list of things they believe they must do, must achieve, and must uphold perfectly. This self-imposed pressure is the engine of exhaustion. You must ruthlessly prune this list. Which musts can you downgrade to prefers? Which musts are completely outside your control? The powerful technique here is the 90-10 focus protocol. Research shows that 90% of our worry and stress energy is spent on things we absolutely cannot control: the future of the economy, the political climate, how a distant relative views us, past events. Only 10% is spent on things we can directly control: our effort today, our choice of reaction, our next small action. You must intentionally and daily redirect your mental energy only to the 10% within your sphere of influence. When a worry arises about the 90%, dismiss it with the phrase, "That is outside my 10% focus zone." Another critical tactic is mental containment, scheduled worry time. Instead of letting worry bleed through your entire day, designate a specific 15-minute slot, for example 6 p.m., as worry time. When a stressor pops up during the day, write it down and tell your brain, "I will deal with this at 6 p.m." This teaches your brain that the worry will be addressed, but not at the expense of your current peace and focus. This single act dramatically reduces the chronic background noise of anxiety. By implementing the 90-10 rule and scheduled worry time, you drain the pool of chronic stress, allowing your emotional defenses to rebuild. In the next chapter, we will expand this peace outwards, helping those around you.
Chapter 8: Extending the Calm: How to Help Loved Ones Lock Their Own Nerve Buttons. Your personal peace is threatened by the chaos of those closest to you. If your partner or child is an emotional landmine, you need to know how to diffuse them without getting caught in the blast. The first 90 seconds are your guide to being a source of calm, not conflict. You have mastered your own internal landscape, but now you must interact with others who are still ruled by their musts. The worst mistake you can make is to try and fix them, criticize their irrationality, or dismiss their feelings. This will only trigger their defense mechanisms. Your goal is to become an emotional anchor. You do this not by lecturing,
but by demonstrating and facilitating their insight. When a loved one is highly reactive, you must maintain your DISC protocol to stay calm. Your calm response is the most powerful lesson they will receive. When they see you stay composed during a shared crisis, their subconscious registers a possibility. Wait, this situation isn't catastrophic if she isn't losing control. The tactical tool here is Socratic questioning. Instead of telling them you shouldn't get so angry, ask them gentle, insightful questions that guide them to their own underlying must. Instead of, "Why are you overreacting?" ask, "What absolute rule do you feel was broken?" Or, "What terrible thing do you believe will happen if you don't get what you want?" These questions force them to look inward and expose the irrationality themselves. For example, if your child is enraged over a low grade, you might ask, "Does getting a B mean you are a failure? Or does it mean you performed poorly on this one test?" This subtly challenges their global rating belief. You must accept that they have the right to their own irrational beliefs and feelings. USA for them. You are only there to provide the tools for self-correction. Never try to control their feelings, only help them challenge the thoughts behind the feelings. By teaching them to separate their actions, which can be fixed, from their worth, which is unconditional, you empower them. Your role is that of a calm mirror, reflecting their own irrationality back to them gently so they can choose a better path. By acting as the calm anchor, you reduce the emotional volatility of your environment, further reinforcing your own nerve lock. The next frontier is the relentless pull of the past.
Chapter 9. Shattering the Past's Grip, Cutting the Emotional Chains of Old Trauma and Regret. Do you ever feel a sudden, debilitating surge of shame or anger about an event that happened years ago? That's the past holding your nerve button hostage. The first 90 seconds reveals how your mind keeps old wounds perpetually fresh. The past cannot be changed, yet many people spend their present moments consumed by regret and anger over historical events. This happens because you have unresolved, active, irrational beliefs about the past. These beliefs fall into two categories. 1. Global condemnation of others, like, what they did was unforgivable and they must be punished forever. And 2. Global condemnation of self, like, I shouldn't have made that mistake and I am inherently flawed because of it. To cut these emotional chains, you need the double acceptance protocol: event acceptance and self-acceptance in the event. Event acceptance means accepting the fact that the event occurred. It was bad, it was painful, and it should not have happened, but it did. You must stop fighting the reality of history. The fight against reality is the source of endless present-day anger. The calm realization that it happened, it's over, and I can't change it, drains the event of its present emotional energy. Your past is not a prediction of your future. It is merely an unchangeable record. Self-acceptance in the event. This is about forgiving your past self. You must apply USA to the person you were back then. You were a human being with finite knowledge, resources, and emotional maturity. You cannot judge your past decisions with the wisdom of your present self. Forgive yourself for the mistakes made. If you were a victim, forgive yourself for any perceived weakness or mistake you made during the trauma. The thought, I should have done better, is a cruel, irrational demand on your past self.
Replace it with, I did the best I could with what I knew then, and I accept myself unconditionally. This process is not about forgetting or condoning. It is about emotional detachment. By applying the preference rule to the past, like, I prefer that injustice hadn't happened, but I accept that it did, you transform deep, paralyzing regret into healthy, functional sadness. Sadness is an emotion that acknowledges loss and then moves on. Regret is a loop that keeps you trapped. Breaking the chains of the past frees a tremendous amount of mental energy that can be reinvested into mastering your present. Your final task, detailed in the next chapter, is ensuring this profound change is permanent.
Chapter 10. The Lifelong Discipline. Maintaining the nerve lock and winning the game of life. You have the keys to your calm, but will you use them tomorrow? The first 90 seconds must confirm. The ultimate victory is not gaining peace, but making peace a permanent, non-negotiable state of being. Locking your nervous system is not a cure, it is a discipline. If you revert to old habits, the mental viruses will rush back in. The highest reward for your efforts, the constant flow of soothing dopamine and true inner peace, comes only through the relentless daily exercise of your newfound rational muscles. To maintain your nerve lock, you must commit to 3 principles. 1. Relentless self-monitoring. Your commitment to the DISC protocol must be absolute. Every single instance of extreme emotion is an opportunity to practice, not a failure. You must be your own vigilant mental guard. 2. The USA lifestyle. Make unconditional self-acceptance the foundation of your daily existence. Accept your fallibility, accept the world's imperfection, and accept others' irrationality. This shield is your perpetual defense against emotional injury. 3. Active engagement. This is not a passive peace. Winning the game of life means using your newfound emotional energy for constructive goals. You are now free from the paralysis of fear and rage. Channel that energy into improving your skills, building healthy relationships, and pursuing your deepest preferences. The core distinction that defines your victory is this: you are no longer reacting to life. You are responding with life. You control your internal reality, which means you control your happiness, regardless of external storms. You have learned that your worth is non-negotiable, and your emotional state is your choice, not a circumstance. This document has revealed the ultimate truth. The problem is never the event. The problem is your irrational belief about the event. By identifying the musts and replacing them with prefers, you reclaim your power and establish a profound, unshakable calm. Congratulations! You have finished the blueprint. Now you must build the castle of your mind.
Conclusion. This document was your definitive guide to escaping the prison of anxiety and rage. You now possess the keys: control of the 3 factors: thought, emotion, and behavior, the antidote to demandingness, preferences, and the tactical drill, DISC. Your inherent worth is your shield. To live a life fueled by passion and defined by inner peace, you must remain the master of your mind. Your calm is your power. 20 common questions answered based on the document's content. Am I reacting to life or responding to life after this document? You are choosing to respond with life by controlling your internal processes rather than passively reacting to life's external triggers. Is my anger caused by others? No. Others are merely triggers. The cause is your own irrational interpretation, specifically your musts. What are the three core factors of control? Thought, cognition, emotion, feeling, and behavior, action. What is the core difference between must and prefer? Must is an absolute demand that leads to rage when violated. Prefer is a strong desire that leads only to healthy disappointment when not met. What is catastrophizing? Exaggerating an unfortunate event, example, failure, into an absolute intolerable horror. How do I use the DISC technique? Detect the emotion, identify the irrational belief, substitute the belief with a preference, and correct the resulting action. What is the mental tongue bite? The split-second pause, step D of DISC, needed to prevent an immediate destructive reaction and activate logic. Why do I struggle with self-esteem when I make mistakes? Because you practice conditional self-acceptance, CSA, tying your worth to perfect performance, global rating. What is unconditional self-acceptance, USA? Accepting your inherent worth as a fallible human being, irrespective of your performance or others' opinions. How do I handle toxic criticism? Use logical indifference. Address the factual content of the criticism, but ignore the emotional generalization, the global rating. What is the 90-10 focus protocol? Intentionally focusing mental energy on the 10% of things you can control and releasing the 90% that you cannot. How can I stop chronic worrying? By implementing scheduled worry time, confining worry to a small, specific time slot each day. What is Socratic questioning? Asking a troubled loved one gentle, insightful questions to help them discover their own underlying irrational beliefs. How do I forgive my past self? By applying self-acceptance in the event, recognizing you acted with the limited knowledge and resources of your past self. Is event acceptance the same as condoning? No. You accept that the event happened, a reality, but you don't have to condone the injustice or action. What is the most powerful tool for permanent peace? Making the conversion of musts to prefers a relentless daily habit, a lifestyle. How does anger relate to fear? Anger, rage, is often the fight response triggered by the emotional panic of a broken must, a fear of the loss of control. What is the global rating virus? Judging your entire self, for example, I am a loser, based on a single action, for example, I failed this project. How does USA help me improve? By removing the catastrophic fear of failure, it frees up mental energy to focus on constructive change and growth. What is the ultimate reward of this discipline? The constant flow of soothing dopamine and true, unshakable inner peace.